Welcome to Breaking Bread with Alie and Gabby. I'm Gabby Loren.
And I'm Alie Valerio. Today we have a super awesome guest. Her name is Mashi Cohen. She currently lives in Los Angeles but hails from New Jersey. She grew up in an Orthodox community and now she's like a spiritual leader, a yoga instructor, and also a life coach for people in recovery. So Mashi, welcome to Breaking Bread. We're so excited to have you, and we want to just delve into your story a little bit, how you grew up and how you got to where you are right now. So take us back to when you were born and growing up in your Orthodox community.
Sure. So, hi everyone. Thank you, Alie, and thank you, Gabby. I'm so honored to be here with you guys today. Wow, what an introduction. So, starting from the beginning, I grew up in a super Orthodox religious town, super Orthodox religious family. And for those who know about that dynamic, just saying that sentence it says a lot, but for those who don't, I'll just give a little overview, try and take you into that world for a second. So it's a world where religion is kind of the end all be all. It governs every single aspect of their lives, like every single aspect, from the littlest things to the tiniest things, from how we dress. So I had to dress, very, very covered up always from when I was really little, elbows, knees, collarbone. That was like the mode of dress is a big thing. The schooling, right? Separate men and women, separate boys and girls. I went to an all girls Orthodox school. So everybody around me in my town that I came across really in my day-to-day life was very similar to me, very similar to my family. So this might sound a little crazy, but I really did not know that other people existed, in the sense that it wasn't really given over to me as like a choice. And I'm not here to, knock anybody's belief system or anybody's community. I think that everybody is so individual, right? As people, we're so different. We all operate so differently, so individually. We all have different needs, wants, desires. We all have a different way of being in the world. And that's the beauty of it all. And I am such an advocate for everybody to just do whatever it is that gives them the most fulfillment in their lives on their own individual journey. And for many people, that may very well be in a religious community like the one that I grew up in. For me, however, it was becoming increasingly evident as I got older and I started reaching, my teenage years, and I was just so miserable. And I wasn't being seen, heard, and understood by the people around me. But the part that really hurt the most was that I didn't even know it, because I didn't know that anything else existed. What I was shown was a very closed view of really the world. And because everybody around me, everyone in my neighborhood, everyone on my block, everyone in my school, everyone in this whole town, like, of course, we would go to Walmart outside the town, whatever, but it was very much like, this is the best way to live, and everybody else is not happy or out to get you, etc. And I say this just to paint a picture in your head, because, again, this is the message that I received. I'm sure it wasn't necessarily intentional, and I do believe that, for the most part, right, people have good intentions in the world at large, and they don't actually want to have their kids feel unseen, unheard, and misunderstood. That was never a goal, but nevertheless, that was very much how it felt to me. So by the time I was 14, I had developed a severe eating disorder where all this pain was so much, and I there was nowhere to put it, and in my own self, I figured that I must be the issue. There must be something very, very wrong with me. So by the time I was 14, 15, I was anorexic, suicidal, really, really did not know really what was wrong with me and what to do to help myself. And it was a dark place. And that really began my journey of self-exploration. And I was so young, thinking back, it's funny. It's like, whoa, I don't really know. I feel so grateful. I feel so divinely guided, because it's been 10 years since then. That was the first, I don't know how much I should get into, just right now, but that kind of led to a whole series of other mental health problems, treatment centers, drugs, and there were so many stops and ups and downs along this journey. And now looking back in hindsight, 2020, and I'm like, what, wow, like to have come from that place of, where I grew up, and then to go through all that, and then to almost, it feels like, emerge out of this black abyss, and to suddenly find myself like, wow, what an incredible learning experience, what an incredible journey. And it just leaves me with such gratitude. And of course, my journey continues on, and I'm just getting started in many ways, but especially now I happen to be on a visit to see my family home. I live in Los Angeles, but I grew up not in Los Angeles, and actually right now went to visit my family for a week. It's been a while since I've seen them, and that's one thing that I've really, 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 in the past 2 days since I've touched down here, recognized is that gratitude and incredulous awe at what we are capable of as human beings, because we all, no matter what we're struggling with, we all have the ability to change our minds, from being one way to being a completely different person.
It's so funny because I really know you as like this deeply beautiful, spiritual, like angelic light worker. Like that's how I think of you. So to think of you in a dark place is like, how did that happen? And then how did you get out of that? Because so many people struggle with darkness, like no matter how old you are. And like I had an eating disorder too when I was 9. So it's like, it's crazy to hear that. And I didn't grow up in a religious community, but I still had this idea that I wasn't enough unless I could control the way that I looked. So how did you go from this really dark place to becoming a light worker, even after getting into drugs? What happened?
Thank you, Alie, by the way. That means so much to me. And, it's funny because I've thought about that myself. Looking back, I've been like, how did I get out of all that? So there was, the eating disorder, and that was years and years of just such intense self-loathing. And then after I had finally left my actual community, there was a bunch of years of just pure darkness where I just felt rejected by the world, because it wasn't the people that I was around, my family, my friends, community, just didn't take to my leaving very well. It's just how things are there. And, I was at the age where most of my friends I had gone to school with were getting married, having children, and I was just so utterly lost. And I was just so lost is really the best word I can come up with, because I didn't know what to do, right? So I knew that wasn't my reality, but I didn't know where else to go. And that's how I started using drugs. And then from there went to rehab. And how did I get out of it? If I had to put it in a couple sentences, I would say a few things. The first is that through it all, I kept going. It sounds cliche, but I just kept going. I just didn't stop. No matter what happened, no matter how many times I fell down, I just woke up the next morning, got up, and tried again. And that resiliency, I didn't always believe that I actually had. Like, there were so many times where I didn't think that I could go on, but I just did. And I just kept going on. So that would be number one. And number two, asking for guidance from whatever it is you believe in. I don't care, but it's pretty evident to me that I am not the end all be all. There's definitely a higher power that's guiding me. And through it all, I have felt so divinely guided, but I asked for it. I asked for guidance. And I remember being 14, lying in bed and just being so enveloped in darkness. And I had this journal where I used to write letters to God, and I asked God to please just help me to figure out what's wrong with me, because at that point I didn't even know. And looking back, the more that I continued asking for guidance and just keep on keeping on, just that resilience, just moving forward, getting up and trying again, falling down and getting back up, and trying again and failing one day, and then the next day getting up and doing it again, and recognizing that sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees. Like in the moment, I couldn't have told you, oh yeah, like one day I'm going to be a light worker, I'm going to be a healer, I'm going to have all this love and light to spread. No, I couldn't have even imagined it in my wildest dreams. But something inside me just kept moving forward, because I knew that this couldn't be all that there is. It couldn't be. And if there's one word of comfort that I wish I could tell my younger self, and anybody really who's going through such intense darkness, because I know how that feels, and how hopelessness and despair, how it feels, and how it really can take a person over. And with those two things, just asking for guidance and just keep on keeping on, and recognizing that it's temporary. Everything is temporary, even when it doesn't feel like it is. So it wasn't a quick fix, an overnight process. It was lesson after lesson after lesson, random quote unquote occurrence after hardship, after confusion. Like it didn't seem to make sense in the moment. Another thing I would say is that another thing that I really kept doing along the way and continue to do, and I'm so grateful for this skill, is just the idea of self-reflection. Of, let's say, going through an experience, minor, major, when it's over, when you can breathe that sigh of relief of whatever it is, being like, okay, whoa, what just happened? Looking back and kind of, however you want to do it. If you like to write, I like to write personally, so that's like always been my thing. But you want to speak it out loud, you want to tell a friend, whatever it is, but to really look back and think, okay, what was my part in all this, and what can I learn from this? And like, what was this experience here to teach me? And the last thing I'm going to say to answer your question is a huge, probably, I don't know, one of the most crucial things that I could have ever done or realized is to recognize that ultimately none of us are victims of our circumstances. Ultimately, the best thing we can do is to stand up, take responsibility for our own lives, and recognize that whatever happened in the past, whatever it is, however many people that have wronged you, because they have, and however many hardships you've been through that weren't fair, because they're not. But dwelling on that and living in that it's just not advantageous. Nobody will fault you for being like, well, I can't succeed because of the way I grew up, and because this person and that teacher and that friend and that thing, and nobody's gonna fault you, but you're the one that loses out most of all, because this is your life. And when I started recognizing that I am the author of my own story, that I do have the power to do whatever it is that I want. And what happened in the past that's all it is. It's in the past. That's not to say that there's not trauma to work through and lessons to learn, and using the past in that way to help you to move forward, but not to live in it, to get out of that victim mentality, to stop playing the blame game. I just stopped playing the game. And that too, by the way, was a gradual process. But there were certain moments where it really just dawned on me, where I had these like spiritual awakenings, and I just recognized like, hey, there's nobody coming in to swoop in and save me. And there's nobody that's gonna, at the end of the day, be like, you know what? It's okay that you didn't do whatever it is that you want to do in life, because you went through all that stuff. Like one doesn't cancel out the other. And I like to say that we're all handed a deck of cards, and we don't get to choose some of that. We don't get to choose the family we're born into, the place in the world that we're born into, right? I could be a Japanese kid, for all I know. Like I didn't choose this existence, but here I am. On some level, I do believe that we did, but that's a different discussion.
Yeah, I was just going to say, actually, you might have actually chose this prior to coming to this world. And, God plays into that, but you're not supposed to be aware of these things in the physical realm. Like purpose, and I know it's a Jewish thought too, is like finding your purpose, working on your soul, like elevating yourself while you're here in the physical so your soul can rise above. And I feel like these experiences you were given, you were obviously divinely guided, just as you said, to elevate your soul to the place that you are today. So Mashi, when you were younger, going through this dark period and journaling and asking God for that divine guidance, do you think your family had any idea that you were really struggling like this?
It's a good question. Um, Honestly, I don't think so. Which, by the way, like I just got chills when you were saying what you said before, because again, different discussion, but I do definitely feel that on so many levels. How, you know, obviously it wasn't a conscious choice, but it's a different discussion. I whatever, but yeah, like on some
Actually,
level,
is it a different discussion? We can get into
I
it.
don't think so.
yeah.
I felt the chills too. I'm like, this is totally karmic. Like it's
Oh my God. Okay.
tune. Like we're talking about Judaism, right?
This is why we have this channel. It's for this exact reason, because everything is divinely guided. You may not
Yeah.
understand it in the moment, but like you were mentioning, when it all comes full circle and you see synchronicities in your life and you see the rhyme to the reason, it all starts to make sense and you see how things connect.
And then
Yes.
100%.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I've been thinking about that recently, like as I've been, working through certain things that I've been through in the past, because what I'm not saying at all is to ignore the past. Of course, we need to work through our traumas and things that we've been through so that they don't affect the future. Yes. But, while doing that, I was put some thought into, wow, like why did my soul choose this incarnation according to what I believe and what I feel? And I do believe and feel that it was to go through this journey and to continue to go through this journey so that I can have the understanding that I now have, and the compassion, the empathy that I now have, because I know what it's like, and I can feel other people's pain, and I can relate, and it's such an honor to be of service however I can. It's like it makes everything worthwhile.
I think
Yeah.
you've moved away from the religious side of Judaism and moved towards the spiritual side. And I don't think every community connects the two. And that's one of the problems with the secular world as well. Like I grew up Reform and there was no connection to those two, worlds. There was no connection. We didn't learn how they both connected. But there is a clear distinction and there is a clear connection. It's just not always brought to the table and communicated or executed in the right way. So it's interesting that you lived in one place and then you were able to see the other side, and maybe even you're able to engage in acts or experiences in the Jewish way. You just don't label it as being a religious thing, or a law. It's a different perspective. It's a perspective shift, I think.
I wanted to ask about that too, Gabby, is that you are very spiritual. Like even though you're not religious, I mean, I don't know what you would label yourself right now, but how do you kind of branch your upbringing with like being raised very religious and like reading Torah to now being a spiritual human and incorporating maybe some of the values you learned when you were little?
Yeah. And this, I love this topic because because I am such a spiritual being, and I've always felt that way, by the way. Even when I was really little, I remember just feeling there's got to be more. Something wasn't sitting well with me. To answer your question real quick, Abby, about my family realizing about me, they did not. And even it took them a long, long time to really understand, what was wrong with me. Like it took them a whole, and still, by the way, they don't probably fully, but we have a good relationship because we both worked on it, and long and hard, and it was not always the way it is now.
Before you go into Allie's question, what do you think they were thinking was going on with you? Do you think they were just like, oh, she's rebelling, or she's just a kid? What do you think was going through their head?
So it's funny because like I was never that rebellious kid that would rebel for the sake of rebellion. And there was plenty of people in my town and the people that I knew that were like that. And it was just never something that I gravitated toward, because that was never my goal. My goal was never to rebel. My goal was to always just be authentically myself. And when I felt like that that was stifled, right? Like my every desire that I had was not okay. That shame, that guilt built up, and I turned all that inward. So this manifested outwardly as, at first, depression, anxiety, and anorexia. So my family, watching that, having no idea what was going on, they were very scared. They didn't know what was happening, and honestly, neither did I at the time. You know, they took me to therapy, which I'm so grateful for, and I'm a huge advocate. It always will be, because even then, and I was so ashamed. It's so funny thinking back. I was so ashamed. It was just not something that was acceptable in my class, in my town, and there was so much shame. This toxic shame was a theme of my teenage years, and it was this idea of who I am is not okay, and that I had to hide who I was. And even the struggles that I was having with my eating disorder and therapy and going to doctors and having depression and anxiety and having to just be different, and I was so ashamed, and I kept it all inside. I didn't feel comfortable talking to any of my friends about it, and I never really did. So I kept going to school. My family was trying their best to, help me, but nobody really knew what was going on. Like, to be honest, those were a really rough, nice amount of years. It was like throughout high school, up until, I was really 18, and I just ended up leaving. But that it was a rough time because they didn't know what was going on. I was slowly getting a little bit of an idea when I went to treatment. Actually, I was there for I went to a bunch, but this one in particular, I was in Oklahoma for 8 months. And in those 8 months, 8 months is a long time, considering I was like 17. So that's like a percentage of my life. And it was the first time that I'd actually lived outside the community for more than summer camp, which isn't even counted because it was with the same people of my community. So in that time, all these questions that I had started coming up, and I was with people that weren't even Jewish, and we were great friends, and these people were saving my life. And that was really confusing to me, because I was like, wait, I was taught something completely different. So what else have I been taught that's just not accurate? And that's when the unraveling really, really started.
How can these communities work on better communication, work on less oppression, maybe connecting more the spiritual side to why you're doing things, so you actually understand and can appreciate and maybe decide for yourself what makes sense and have that journey? Like, a lot of Balt Shuva people experience that because they chose it instead of being told to do something and not having a choice. So I think there's so many different experiences out there, and it's unfortunate for certain communities to not actually be able to like communicate with their children or with their neighbors and actually have like a healthy dialogue in order to like rectify this problem, because it's not just something you've experienced. Obviously, this can happen and it's common.
I think also, like, in Chabad, maybe people are a little bit more open, but in all religious communities, Christian, Catholic, Mormon, Jewish, whatever you are, Jehovah's Witness, like, I think the goal is to keep people within the communities. I think that part of religion, which is why I didn't gravitate towards it when I was younger, is because I felt like it was a method to control people. And my dad's Catholic, my mom's Jewish. She wasn't raised religious, and she was like, not, they were both kind of anti-religion. My dad's raised super religious, and he was raised like, this is the only thing you believe, you associate with other Catholics. Christians only marry Christians, Jews only marry Jews. You still see this in communities, but I think that's kind of part of the very ultra religious, is that you want to stay in that community and only support people within that community in order to strengthen it. But I agree with you, Gabby. It's like there's something wrong with it. There's like a disconnect where some people are like, wait, well, there is, but I don't really know the answer. But I think it's part of the structure.
I've also heard a lot of times with Holocaust survivors, it's a big problem in communities, or like descendants of Holocaust survivors, because of all that generational trauma. They want to stay more connected and exclude everybody else and pretty much be alone and only connected with the people in their community. So this can also be a trauma response as well. I don't want to offend anybody that's listening right now, but it is something that is said, that when you're super only connected to the community that you are in, and there's no outside influence, and there is a little bit more oppression on certain people, especially the children, and at least they feel that, and we can't invalidate their feelings. It might be coming from that trauma that happened during World War II, where everything was ripped away from our people and they didn't have anything.
I think like both of you guys bring up such great points. And, you know, as someone who grew up in a super, super religious community, I've thought about this a lot. And I want to be clear that I don't think that this is only in the Jewish Orthodox religious communities. I agree with you, Alie, that, and Gabby, that this goes across all religions, and there's so many dynamics at play. There's generational trauma, there's parents, the school systems, the way that things are run, just being out of fear, very fear-based. This like feeling of like, oh my God, like if we expose our children, we'll lose them. Like this, it's very fear-based. And as somebody who, to get back to your question about spirituality, Alie, I've always felt like what matters at the end of the day really is the energy that you give out, the love that you give, the way that you treat other people, and the way that you are, the way that you have a being in the world should be one of pleasant experiences, that your interaction should be loving and kind, that compassion and empathy should play a part, and that includes non-judgment, and that includes authenticity, and that includes respect, and that includes communication, and that includes peace, and all these core values of mine, which I now do my best. Of course, I'm far from perfect, but do my best to embody and just to spread light. And thinking back, that was almost the antithesis of what I was shown. And again, this is just my experience. I'm not here to like knock anyone, point fingers, or everybody's on their own individual journey, but I can speak to my experience and say that I so badly wish that I could, speak to the community. And if I thought that it would be helpful, like if I thought there were people that would want to hear this, I would. And I do think that there are. And I do see, even in the last 10 years, like since, my own struggle started, there is a very slow progression and movement toward this more open-minded view of things. And a perfect example is what I do now as a holistic health coach. I work for this virtual outpatient program where it's all over virtual, so it's very recent. It was like a Corona invention. But I work with clients, many of them are from the community, not all of them specifically. It's not like it's owned by Jewish people, but it happens to be that most of the clients happen to be Jewish. But what's beautiful about it is that it really has such a holistic view, different than anything that I've come across in the Jewish community, for sure. So I find that to be very forward thinking, and I feel so honored to be able to work for this organization and to give back in that way. Right now, I do work with mostly people from the community, which is so ironic to me, because when I went into the field of psychology, when the dust kind of started to settle, and I was like, what do I want to do with my life? And what I kind of gravitated toward after trying so many different things, and I dipped my toe, and we can talk about, that's a whole different conversation, but what I found my soul really called to this whole understanding of my own mind through my own experience, and psychology, really understanding transformative change, how it happens, how we can teach it to others. And so since I started studying all that stuff, and this was initially just out of my own pure curiosity and interest, but it quickly turned into a passion, which quickly turned into a career, something I really just feel called to do, to spread that light however I can, and to continue on to get my master's in psychology. I want to study spiritual psychology, specifically transformative change, along with yoga, which I of course love, and that was a huge part of my healing. And I'm so grateful that the yoga practice found me. I like to say it was, again, divinely guided, not something I ever thought that I would do. I was the last person to ever sit still for more than 10 seconds at a time. But here I am. And it's all just part of the flow. And so back to my job. So I started studying psychology. I got my bachelor's in psychology. Now work as a coach, so which is very aligned as well. And I love coaching because I am pretty action oriented. So I took some coaching courses, and this love for learning and this love for deeper understanding of myself and of other people has really, really guided me towards this field. And I'm so, again, just honored and humble to be in a place where I can give back and give hope, really instill hope, spread light. And it's not about religion. I don't make it about religion, and if my clients will bring it up to me, because a lot of them do struggle with the same or similar issues within the community in whatever capacity, male, female, older, younger, but it's a big part of their lives. And I understand that. And I realize that I can get through to my clients without actually talking about specifics. It's really not about the semantics, but it's about the underlying issues, which are pretty similar ultimately across the spectrum, because we're all human. No matter what our situation is, we all unite on the field of human emotion, right? And to impart that to my clients is just such a gift, and to everyone that I really come into contact with however I can, especially when I'm back home, back in my community for a visit, to just try and instill in whatever way I can that it's so not about, what you choose to believe or what the way you live your life or your particular lifestyle. It's so much more about understanding that at the end of the day, at our core, we're all the same. We all have the same emotions, and to put our emotions and other people's emotions, making sure that, what we do is aligned with our values. The way that we treat other people is aligned with our values, so that it's not just something that you read in a textbook, but it's actually a way that you live your life, things that you embody. So I think I went off on a little bit of a tangent, but I'm very passionate about that. And so, yeah, so in my job, like what I currently do now is just to really, coach people into holistic health, which I like to describe as health from the inside out, where, it's so much less about, your physical exercise regimen, and more about making sure that all the different facets that make us who we are aligned, are working in tandem, are working together, that your mind, body, spirit complex, the way I like to call it, are all working as one. They're not fighting against the other, because that's where the discord, that's where the depression, that's where the discontent is, where there's just such a dissonance between a person's real authentic self, what they believe in their core, what they know is right for them, versus all the messages that they're receiving from outside sources and their whole lives.
Mashi, I have a question for you.
Sure.
It's kind of two in one. Do you feel like today, I know you're at home with your family, is your family more accepting? And also, are you engaged in anything that's considered religious still? Like, do you do any of the traditions, the Jewish traditions?
So, yeah, so about the family piece, what I will say is that for anybody that can relate to anything that I talked about, and family struggles are across the human spectrum. We all have like our own family issues, and it really does take both parties to really come to a place of recognizing that at the end of the day, what are we going to put first? Is our love conditional, or is our love unconditional? So there was a time when I came to my family, because there was a couple of years there where we really were not talking at all. They didn't want to talk to me. They were very hurt. They were betrayed. It was a big deal for everybody. And that hurt me, because that was never my intention to hurt anybody. But there comes a point where I realized that this is my life. And I told them this. I actually did. It was actually in rehab. They came to visit me, which I'm to this day so eternally grateful for my therapist in rehab, who convinced me to allow my parents to come be there, because I did not want them to come. They did come. And we had a very crucial conversation where I told them that, hey, I accept and respect you guys as you are. And I just please ask for the same in return. and I'm going to go live my life. I'm going to go do me. And if you cannot accept me for who I am, like, I understand that, you know, that might be too much to ask, but then I'm going to go, like, I'm going to go find it, you know, a different family. I'm going to go. I can't live like this where, you know, I feel this such like pain coming from you, where it feels like you're putting your religion above the love for your child. And and I know that this struggle that I had is unfortunately all too common, where it's very, very difficult for parents and families, for, you know, where religion plays such a crucial role in their life. It's like takes up their whole reality. It really their beliefs shape their reality, and it's hard for them to see past it, to the point where one of their children in their mind strays from the path, quote unquote. It's very, very difficult for them to embody this love that I hope that they feel towards their child. And unfortunately, I've seen this over and over, and parents will not know how to deal with it, and to the point where what the message that they're giving across to their child is one of conditional love, where I love you as long as you know, conform to the standards of whatever it may be. And I do want to give credit at the same time to the many families and parents, including my own, that so gratefully are able, I'm so grateful that they have reached a place where they can look past many things, and I do feel that love from them. But I will say that it also involves a certain amount on my part of just acceptance of what is, acceptance of, you know, my family may not ever change, and I need to accept that. And when I go home, I do my best to be respectful and to be myself, but also to be respectful. And that's a constant push and pull, which I play around with. And it's all a learning experience. And about the spiritual piece, you asked what parts of religion do I keep, if any, and it's a continuous journey, and it continues to be. So what I say now, I'm fully aware that I'm open to everything, attached to nothing. I think that there's a very misconstrued way that religion and spirituality have been intertwined, and people get it really confused. Ultimately, the way I see it is that spirituality is the overarching goal. We're all spiritual beings here in this physical experience, in this time-space reality, here to elevate our soul, to do whatever we can to spread our light. I do believe that for some people, religion can be a way to achieve spirituality, because when in many religions, and I've studied many other religions, you know, just out of curiosity, and ultimately many of them do come from, you know, some more than others, but values that are true and fundamental truths. And each religion has its own story, how it took shape and how it's evolved over the years, and the various extremes. I happen to have been born in an extreme sect of a very beautiful religion, which I call Judaism. And I don't even like to say that Judaism is a religion, because I don't believe that it is. It's a way of being. Judaism is a way of being. So I am so proud to be Jewish, and it's who I am, and I absolutely adore it, and I learn it in my own way. I learn Kabbalah. I love mystic stuff. It's just something I've always been intrigued by. So, you know, in my own way, I do learn and embody the fundamental values, the core truths, which I believe that Judaism, that's the essence of it: compassion, empathy, love, living your life for a higher purpose. So being of service, like all these values, that's how I define Judaism. So do I, at this point, there's been ebb and flow. You know, there was times when I would just be in the mood for a Shabbat meal because it reminded me of my family, and it was a fun time to just gather together and be with friends and feel connected. And a lot of it is about just feeling connected. So do whatever makes you feel connected, whatever gives you that sense of belonging, of belonging to something greater than yourself. You can define yourself however you define yourself. I don't care. Just embody the core values that are the fundamental truths of human beings, whoever you are and wherever you are and whatever you practice.
Thank you so much, Mashi, because having you on has been very eye-opening. And I think it's so amazing to hear perspectives from different people. And we have to respect everybody's experience and allow them to have their own. And that's a big part of your story here is like, not everyone's going to see things the same. Not everyone is supposed to have the same experience in this life to raise their soul level. I think that's okay. And I think God wants it to be that way. So, like you do what you want to do, you do what you can, but as long as you're growing and moving upwards as a person, and you respect other people, then I think that's all that really matters here. And we're very blessed to be able to have this conversation with you today. Right, Alie?
100%. And Mashi, I love your energy. I really value your expression too. I watched that show Unorthodox on Netflix, and it kind of casts like a negative light on the Orthodox world and how she like sheds herself. And I see like your story kind of encapsulates both, but also it's truly the story that you create for yourself, because you can't always change your experience, but you can change the way that you feel about it and what you do with it. So I really respect the light that you're helping other people come into when they've been living in the darkness in their story. So how do we catch you? Where do we find you? Like, what are you doing so people can catch you after this episode?
Absolutely. And thank you, both of you. Like, it's been such an honor to talk with both of you today. You all are so amazing. And I got the chills as you were just talking, because that really is my ultimate goal, just to spread that light for whoever, and my experience, yes, has been my experience. And like you said so beautifully, Gabby, we all have different experiences, and that's the beauty of life. So ultimately, whatever experience that we have, we all know what darkness is, and we all know what light is in our own way. Just be part of the light. Just whatever you do, be part of the light and go towards the light. And of course, the darkness will be there, and it always will be. And we can acknowledge that, and we can hold both. We can acknowledge that, there will be darkness, but we can still face towards the light.
Amen, sister.
Amen.
I work for this place. I don't want to really give their name, but I'm actually have a website. It's called theunleashedlife.com. I can send you a link, and if you want, you can link it below.
Sure.
Check me out. I do individual coaching. I'm starting a YouTube channel called Life Unleashed, where that's really what I hope to impart, like to help other people unleash their life from whatever it is that keeps them held down, whatever it is, addiction, the darkness, mental health, whatever it may be, just to help people let go and feel a little bit more free. So I also do yoga. I teach yoga on Instagram Live every Wednesday and Friday. Right now, you can find me on Instagram, Mashi Cohen, my name.
We can't wait to hopefully have you on again to talk about something else that's spiritual and beautiful. You guys, please like and subscribe. If you love this episode, comment below. We will see you next time for Breaking Bread with Alie and Gabby. Bye. I love your two favorite Jewish girls and Mashi.
Free now.
Love you all.